the sidelines. Has a man wide open. It's tipped. It's picked off. MJ Devonshire. Got face. He's going to take it to the end zone. Pittsburgh takes the lead.
He loves those moments. It reminds me of last year in the Garden against St. John's. And guys just stepped up. Blake hits a what the hell 3. You know, we're like, what are you doing? And he's done that all year.
Klicka out to Bizzario. It's over! The Pitt Panthers have upset Wisconsin.
Anybody if he hits his field goal. Up and got it! Sauls does it again!
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Simplified Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Kaminsky. I'm joined by my co-host, Mason Kling. How are you doing tonight, Mason?
I'm doing well, Zach. I'm doing well. Before we do get into anything Pitt-related, I do want to be the first to congratulate LSU on their 2030 national championship after we heard Baby Gronk rizzed up Livy Dunne.
Have you heard that he's cheating on Livy Dunne, though? He's taking visits to other schools. I think this is going to be a really, really long recruitment cycle. I mean, these kids, man, they're decommitting, and no amount of Riz can. Now, here's my question to you: was he rizzing up Livy Dunne, or was Livy Dunne rizzing up him? That's the true question we have to answer.
She went in for the full hug. He side hugged her. I don't know. That's a Risley, like a Riz king to me.
Just sort of the nonchalant hug. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sort of an Andrew Tate move.
Yeah, Baby Gronk might break NIL.
Okay, so you guys might notice that Kent's not with us tonight, and this is really hard for us to say, but Kent joined the Live Tour. It was before the merger, and we were like, Kent, why are you going to the Live Tour? It's run by the Saudis. You're a podcaster. You don't play golf. But he just said the money was better on the Live Tour than it is doing this podcast, which – yeah, it is, but unfortunately we are once again trying to free Kent from Middle Eastern prison. He got there. Some paperwork was messed up, but we're hoping for the best for Kent.
Money's just too good on the Live Tour, man.
I mean, they're taking everybody. No one can escape the grasps of the Saudi government and Mohammed bin Salman. We do have a guest on the show tonight to fill in, but first I want to cover a couple housekeeping items. So, first off, the preseason hype video. It has to go through one more cut because in the pre-episode talks, I realized I forgot one clip. So I'm going to go back, put that in. So that's coming out soon. We're also going to have a new logo, a new intro, and basically new graphics for the whole podcast. Those will be coming soon. We've got some preliminary designs back. We like them. They're great. And then our next episode after this, just to get out of the way, we are going to start doing conference previews. We're going to do them a little bit differently this year. Last year we did all 5 power conferences, did G5 episode. We are going to do sort of an ACC-centric conference preview and then sort of touch on teams we like from other conferences. But they're in the writing. They're coming up. So just to give you all a heads up.
Yeah, let us and if there's someone specific you want to hear about that so we can tailor a little bit more, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to cover all 14 ACC teams. We're going to cover Notre Dame. But yeah, if you want to hear about another team, I mean, we'll probably do some WVU stuff just because know your enemy. Probably do some Penn State stuff because they're supposed to be good, unfortunately. But yeah, no, if you want to hear about a team, if you want to hear about fucking Kansas State, Kansas, Arkansas, let us know. And now, without further ado, our special guest, Dom Campbell. He is a alum of the Pitt News, and he's currently writing for Pittsburgh Sports Now. Dom, how you doing?
Doing great, guys. Glad to be on the pod and glad to discuss anything Pitt related with you guys.
All right, so let's start. The reason why you're on this pod, this is a tweet from Jim Nagy, the guy who runs the Senior Bowl, from June 9th. So this is about a little under a week ago, about how Keaton Slovis was one of the 2 returning quarterbacks who received a Senior Bowl invite last fall. I'll just go read it. We'll do a read a tweet segment. People who claim stats don't lie have no clue because they do in many cases when it comes to projecting college players to the NFL. Statistically, Slovis' numbers on paper have declined in many areas. True. Since his breakout true freshman season at USC, but his NFL talent tape is obvious when you put on tape. Keaton Slovis is one of the most naturally accurate passers in the 2024 class. When we talk to NFL scouts, they love his ball placement on mid-range throws that are so critical in the pro game. NFL is all about fitting ball into tight windows, and Slovis has that skill. Other main thing that stood out on last year's pit tape was Slovis' toughness. He got physically abused last year in some games, see Tennessee, and showed guts handling it. I mean, where do we want to start with this? We wanted to air the grievances today, and I don't even know where to start. Let's start with ball placement. I think that's the first thing that I looked at. So, when you were watching Pitt games last year, did you think that Keaton Slovis had good ball placement?
I feel like it's funny because that's the first thing he listed, and I literally think that was one of his worst traits. He was throwing people into coverage all the time. Yeah. Couldn't hit a window. I don't know how you watch his tape and say, yeah, that guy can put it on a rope. He can place the ball. No, absolutely not.
That ball placement for him against Louisville, where he threw it in double coverage for the interception, like first half. I mean, that's great ball placement right there.
Dude, one of my coworkers has he got a PFF login somehow, and I actually went through all of Slovis' picks, and some of them just look even worse when you can see what he was seeing on the field. It's so bad. And the toughness thing was he was getting beat up in the pocket. He couldn't move. He's a statue in the pocket, and that's sort of the second complaint we had about him last year is that he had happy feet, but he couldn't move, and then he didn't throw the ball away. So, Jesus.
Just not in this day and age, you need to be able to run to some extent. You don't have to be Michael Vick, but you need to be able to get out of the pocket if needed, scramble, throw the ball away. He was just such an unconfident player that it didn't matter what he did. It just looked like he was scared on the field when he didn't need to be.
He looked like one of those kids who this might be a super niche reference, but that kid where your dad, his dad is the coach of the next level up in youth football. So he plays up and he plays quarterback because he's the coach's kid and just looks all the time like he's scared for his life. That's what it was like watching Keaton Slovis.
I mean, yeah. So would you guys agree? I'm going to discount the UNC games. I think they were outclassed in that game, but at least Georgia Tech and Louisville, he certainly lost us those games, especially Georgia Tech. I mean, you can look at the box score from that game. He goes, oh, he had 300 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, all in garbage time, but, that's neither here nor there. So I'd say he lost at least 2 games on his own. Like Dom mentioned earlier, the picks in the Louisville game. I was even thinking about it going back to the backyard brawl. He didn't even look that good in that game, where he wasn't where he wasn't concussed or where he didn't have long lasting concussion effects or anything. It was just he looked bad.
The pick 6 was the best thing that's ever happened to his tenure for us because that I feel like he just rode the high of those clips and everybody kind of just the buzz around the game, and it kind of just got swept under the rug. I don't remember his stats from that game. I feel like they were okay, but it wasn't anything spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, watching that game, the packed press box, everybody and their mother was there. NFL scouts, every news organization from here. I'm pretty sure there must have been some international ones, but massive game. And he just didn't play very well at all. I mean, so much of the game, I don't think it was as bad as it was in Georgia Tech and Louisville because it is a big-time game. You're going to be under pressure. I understand that. But, he's the one that went out and said, F West Virginia. He was going out and saying they stink. Okay, well, your job is to not be bad in a game against the biggest rival in your opening game. And he just, besides that late drive where they went 92 or 93 yards on the field, he was just not good in that game. And MJ Devonshire saved him from huge embarrassment that would have maybe derailed this last season into something I don't even want to get into.
Yeah, so his box score from that game is 16 for 24 for 308 and a touchdown, which is his best line of the season. I'm discounting Georgia Tech because that's all garbage time.
What about Miami?
Okay. All right. 18 for 28 for 262 and 3 touchdowns. However, what do you remember from the Miami game? Was it Keaton Slovis being really good, or was it Jared Wayne going fucking superhuman?
It's very true.
Yeah, I'll give it to Jared Wayne. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm
Air
thinking
Canada,
about
baby. Air Canada.
Air Canada. I'm thinking about it. Like, can you guys name one positive, like one standout moment from Slovis from the season? Right, because like we said, the pick six is the West Virginia game. Virginia Tech is all Izzy. Virginia's the 2 pick sixes, and then Miami is Jared Wayne. There's not a single standout moment. It's like that was the Keaton Slovis game. No, he just sucked.
I guess maybe just taking a bunch of shots against Tennessee and that one play with where Gavin Bartholomew like hurled the guy. But that's Gavin Bartholomew's play. It's not really Keaton Slovis's play. I think that's just so much of his season is like, oh, someone else caught the ball and did something really cool.
Yeah.
That play accounted for like a quarter of his yards in that game too.
Yeah. I think my favorite moment was when he just didn't play in the Sun Bowl. That was that's my favorite Keaton Slovis memory.
All right. So this did get some news or some talking about the Marquez Williams tweet, where I believe his exact words were, "Fuck."
I have it actually.
Go ahead.
He says, "LOL, 3 dots. I wish he was on our schedule so we can make him quit like he did on us." And then a bunch of emojis basically saying you stink. But I mean, that's basically what he said. Just that's really, really something you don't want to hear from if you're a BYU fan next year. But we'll get into that in a minute. But
yeah, not the first time we've talked about Marquez Williams here on social media, which I don't know. I love when players do that. I love when they kind of show their personality a little bit, especially when they give us that kind of inside look to maybe what that player was like in the locker room or some other, like even off the field stuff that it looks like was going on here. Probably the most that we're going to get, because I'm sure Narduzzi was like, hey, we can't really say too much more than that. But yeah, it sheds a little bit of light.
It's not the first time we got those comments either from Marquez Williams either. When his transfer was first announced back in December, he said, as a team captain, you're supposed to talk to your boys first before anything. Wasn't no love at all. And then his original comment was, quote, tweeting the news saying, "I want to keep my comments to myself," which I guess he didn't. But like, we've known for a while that he was not well liked in the locker room, and we don't probably performance based, maybe leadership based. All you hear about Phil is like leadership is one of the big buzzwords they use. So you have to think he wasn't much of a leader, even though he had that C on his jersey. So I don't know. I'm just happy to be rid of him. And Jim Nagy, you're a bum.
I have like embrace debate question.
Okay.
Or I guess maybe a set the line question. How many games do we think he's actually going to start at BYU this year? Whether it be injuries, whether it be coach's decision, like is he going to play? I don't see him playing more than 8 games.
So so they don't have the really easy schedule anymore. They used to have like the Notre Dame style schedule where they just had a bunch of FCS teams. They are a Big 12 team now. Now, Dom, who do they play in week 3? And he might see a familiar face on the other side of the ball.
They go to Arkansas. John Morgan III, defensive lineman, also known shit talker of Penn State and West Virginia. So well loved by Pitt fans, and we wish him all the success as a Razorback in 2023.
Especially Saturday, September 16th, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2 in Razorback Stadium, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Did you guys see that Twitter thread too between Marquez and John Morgan? That was pretty funny. So
yeah, I got a message. I got a mission for you.
What was the? Do you have the exact tweet pulled up, Zach? Not to make you go searching again.
It shouldn't be that hard to find. Give me a second. It's just okay. John Morgan 6 from Marquez. Week 3, do me a favor. John Morgan says, "You haven't said nothing but a word." Everyone knows.
That's all you need to hear. That's all you need to hear.
Okay. I'm looking at this schedule. Where could Keaton Slovis get hurt? Obviously at Arkansas.
I'd like to say we're not rooting for injuries. Let the record show. He's just injury prone.
Theoretical, where could he get hurt, right? I mean, if we're talking about a benching, maybe after the Texas game, Texas Tech, TCU. There's a stretch of TCU, Texas Tech, and Texas. That could, if he's rough in there, they could go to a younger guy because obviously he's a one and done quarterback. They get the Oklahomas at the end of the year, and then it kind of how does the line hold up in the Arkansas game? I kind of agree that he's not going to play all 12 games.
Yeah, like it definitely. I don't know. He could always go and surprise us. And
no.
Yeah. Who am I kidding? It's a shame, man, because I don't know. I like to root for BYU. They're a fun team to root for normally. Not so much this year. I don't know.
You know what? You're doing a little. You're doing a sabbatical. You're taking 1 year off.
Yeah, maybe we'll call it a mission trip.
There we go.
I mean, when it comes to Keaton Slovis, like it's amazing how he somewhat failed upward. Like he failed at Pitt. Like he really did. Like I mean, if you look at his stats, it's not good. If you look at the game play, it's not good. And now he's going to be the quarterback of a team that's moving into the Big 12. A big shift from when they were an independent. They're going to be taking on good teams. I mean, granted, people have the Big 12 and the stigma against terrible defense, but I mean, like, he wasn't that great against ACC defenses, which aren't like world beaters themselves. Especially Georgia Tech, a team that had just come off their head coach getting fired, which is probably honestly the best thing for them because he was awful. But I mean, anyways, just like it just amazes me how he's failed upward. I've never seen a college football player do this before. Maybe I should think of others, but he's the number one on my list for someone who has failed upward.
If you compare him to the quarterback he faced in the backyard brawl, JT Daniels, who also had a real failure of a season, where he was benched much earlier than Keaton decided to transfer, he went down to Rice, which is moving. I believe they're moving into the American this year, but they're moving laterally within the G5. But he had to step down to the G5 level. And Slovis, you're right. He's moving to another Power 5 conference, even though like his tape sucked.
Maybe that was his reasoning, is he was like, he bought into that, like you said, Dom, that the Big 12 defense narrative. He's like, man, I can't. These UNC defenses are too much for me, man. I need Oklahoma.
And that's so funny because UNC, the worst part about them is their defense. But it's so funny because last year, all Pitt had to do was either beat both Georgia Tech and Louisville, easily manageable, or have beaten North Carolina, and they would have been in the ACC championship game against a pretty, again, weak Clemson team. And that's what makes it so angry because, like, and this has to fall on the coaching staff for allowing him to play as long as he did because he was just so poor where any game manager would have just done better at handling the game to some extent. So that's why it's so frustrating. Yeah.
So if you're the coaching staff last year, where do you bench Keaton Slovis? Because I'm a little bit more reactive. I would have said right after Georgia Tech, you're out of here, buddy.
I might have said mid-game Georgia Tech. I mean, they weren't down, but he was terrible, and you need to win those games. You can't lose those games. But I mean, more realistically, probably after Georgia Tech would have been benched, or midway through the Louisville game, I think it would have been obvious that you can't have him playing anymore. Just simply was not good enough.
I think that was sort of like the last possible time because you would have had to have someone come in to get some game experience before. I believe UNC was the next week, if I remember correctly. So, you would have had to do it then at some point before the UNC game. But you're right. In that 4-game stretch, he should have been benched because even in the one game we win in that stretch, he did nothing. Jesus, what were his stats from the Virginia Tech game? That's probably 21.
Terrible.
I mean, here's the thing, too. If Nick Patty hadn't also got hurt in the Tennessee game, we might have never seen Keaton Slovis again. Like, because if he goes in, I don't know, if he goes in and, I mean, I know we were playing cupcakes at that point, but actually shows that he can play. I'm not sure how long. Like, I don't know. This is talking in retrospect, right? Retrospect's 2020, but I think it could have been a possibility that at that point we're riding a paddy wagon instead of Slovis. But I don't know.
I mean, I agree. I also think that a big factor in him not getting benched was Patty probably was hurt for longer than the staff let on. Like, he was really limping at the end of that game, and they weren't going to go right to Yarnell. And I don't really blame them for not going to him because it was his full like first year without being injured, and then the year before that it was no season at all in high school yet. It was a COVID year. But yeah, I mean, if Patty doesn't get hurt, Slovis is out next week against Western Michigan anyway. And you kind of just got to roll with a hot hand because, the Western Michigan game and the Rhode Island games, like, they aren't running the full offense. They're really just running the ball. They don't really care. They're just like, we're just going to get out of here with a win. And if Patty is playing, I think I agree with you that Slovis probably doesn't see the field again, especially if Patty wins that Tennessee game. Like, if you bench the guy who comes in and brings your team from behind, not only would the fans be fucking insatiable, especially Pitt fans who are always calling for some new guy. But you would have to think it would have some sort of crazy effect within the locker room. Like, that's our guy. He won us the game. He's been with the program 5 years. Like, start him.
I mean, what makes a quarterback great isn't just their ability to throw the ball, which is the problem that draft analysts have a problem with. They look at a player, they see the intangibles, but they don't see leadership is something hard to quantify because you can't look at a game and be like, are they a leader? It's more like, what do their players say about them? Is it just cliche stuff? Or is there actual moments where they can be like, that guy looks like he's leading the team. This is what he does. This is what he does every day in practice, after the game, in the game, whatever. Kenny Pickett, again, a player who struggled a bit starting out, but improved over the years, became a leader, and that Pitt got to where they were because of not just him, but the entire team rallying around each other and using their strengths and their abilities to really win. Nick Patty, again, not as good as Kenny Pickett, but a leader, someone that cares. I just don't think, not to slander Slovis again, but again, I just don't know how much he cared. Did it look like he cared in games? I mean, it was miserable watching those games. You guys are fans. I mean, in the press box, it was awful.
He was playing for himself, and that's kind of what the transfer portal does versus a guy like Nick Patty that's been there for 5 years. He's going out there and playing with the guys that he was in the weight room with for 4 years, up at 5 a.m., like those 6 a.m. lifts. You just can't, like you said, can't quantify it. You can't quantify playing for each other in leadership.
Anything else about Keaton Slovis? Have we gotten all the grievances about this guy?
Yeah, I think Pat Narduzzi takes a little bit of slack from me for not benching him when he needed to. I would have taken Nate Yarnell over Slovis because you could have seen what Yarnell did, maybe seen some development. Because what did Slovis do to make this team any way better than what they did? The defense bailed him out of so many games. Syracuse and Duke, the last 2 home games were miserable watches. The defense did great in those games. Virginia, they scored 2 touchdowns in the first 2 plays defensively, which is incredible. But again, Slovis isn't winning those games. The defense is winning those games. And I just think Pat has to be you stink, you got to get out. And he has to take a bit you know what, I messed up on this transfer. It's on me. Which I don't think is too hard for him to do, but I think that's just something he needs. It's a bit slack on me that I'm going to give him. He will stick with someone like Pickett, which is smart, but then he'll stick with someone like Slovis who's not good. And always being behind your guys has a drawback, essentially, is what I'm trying to get at.
It is very weird to me that he's done that before. I mean, in Kenny's freshman season, he benches DiNucci because he's not getting it done. He puts in Pickett, but for some reason he was against doing it this year. I don't know if it's he thought it might be a bad look for the transfer portal for guys, but I agree. I hope he has learned from last year. You need to have a pretty quick hook on your quarterbacks. I mean, look at Clemson, the premier program in the ACC, probably for the last decade. Halfway through the year, they had to pull DJU from a game. They end up winning because Cade comes in because DJ couldn't fucking hit the side of a barn. And then later in the season, they end up benching DJ because Cade is a better passer. And I'm sort of on the DJ resurgence train at Oregon State because they have a better run offense than Clemson. But, you've done it in the past. The top coach in the league is doing it now. So What's stopping you from taking a lesson from the guy who's won the league fucking 5 or 6 times? I actually don't know the number.
Just you want it on the record. You telling Narduzzi take a page out of Dabo's book? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Say what you want about Dabo. They win.
I will say though, he did bench Max Brown in that Penn State game at Beaver Stadium in 2017 for DiNucci.
Yes, that's right.
Player he brought in from USC, a transfer, he did bench him. Now, granted, Brown ended up not starting the rest of the season because he got injured in that Syracuse game, which Kenny Pickett eventually burned his red shirt in. But like, he did bench Max Brown in that Penn State game when they were bad offensively, and then Ben DiNucci came in. So he's done it before.
He's got it.
Last season was so disappointing. I'm glad the Sun Bowl saved us from a lot of things. Thank you, Nick Patty. Thank you.
Yeah.
One
I feel like we keep saying, all right, we're putting Keaton Slovis in an envelope. We're sending him away. We're not going to talk about him anymore. And then here we are, almost a half hour into the podcast, and it's the hot takes on Twitter get us fired up, man.
All right. One last thing on Keaton Slovis. I swear it's the last thing I have. I've been staring at his 2022 game log in awe. How many times, I'm each you going to guess, how many times did Keaton Slovis, okay, first off, how many times did he complete more than 20 or more passes in a game last year?
3. Yeah.
2.
Oh, damn it.
Okay. One was Rhode Island. Can you name the other one?
It's not Miami.
Yeah, because we just heard that stat line. Is it UNC because we were just trying to throw our way back in?
No. He had 14 completions that game.
Georgia Tech, right?
No, that was the one I gave you. 26 in that game. That was his most completions on the year.
All right.
On 45 attempts, by the way. So take that how you will. Are we stumped?
Dude.
Yeah.
Rhode Island 20 for 27.
Oh, I should remember that one.
Right.
That was an odd game.
That was okay. And then my second question: Keaton Slovis had 10 touchdown passes on the year last year. How many games did he throw 0 in?
I think it's 5.
Bingo! He threw 0 touchdowns against Rhode Island, Virginia Tech, Louisville, North Carolina, and Syracuse.
That's an NFL talent, baby.
That's so nasty. Oh my god! How do you look at that if you're a BYU fan and think, "Oh, this is going to be great this year"?
Yeah, I mean, in 4 of 11 starts, he had more touchdowns than interceptions. And like we said earlier, one of those Miami games, that's all Jared Wayne. That's all him. That's Air Canada. That's the Air Canada game. He was smoking the U.S. like these wildfires have been done. Okay, so we're 27 minutes in. I think that's enough talking about Keaton Slovis. I do want to get to one other grievance that I have been thinking about basically nonstop, ever since the idea of this podcast came up. The wide receivers last year, outside of Jared Wayne, that is my second grievance that I have not been able to stop thinking about. Like, I don't know if it was Slovis, the offensive design, or like coaching, but guys were not open at all. And like Mason said earlier, Keaton Slovis wasn't hitting those throws. He was throwing guys into coverage. He was late. Balls were off target, so it was kind of hard to judge. But I think a lot of the time last year, there wasn't a lot of separation with the wide receivers. Now, we do lose Jordan Addison as well. That does give you a lot of separation. Defense got to count for a guy like that. But I don't know. I think this is a very big prove year for Taquan Underwood. What do you guys think?
Well, I think I won't blame the wide receiver group too much, mainly because the quarterback's job is not only to put passes to the wide receiver, it's to help them create separation, especially in modern day game with scrambling. So what Kenny Pickett did really well in 2021 was his ability to scramble meant that defenses had to account for him, meaning you can take a linebacker out or a cornerback that's trying to go on a blitz, which means that maybe you have a wide receiver open that wasn't open when Slovis is playing, because when Slovis was throwing, it's obvious he's throwing because he can't run, right? So the wide receiver group was like, okay, we're going to go out for a pass. The defense already knows it. Then you can easily stop that, basically that play pretty easily. I guess that's one way I'm looking at it. Not that they deserve credit for not doing as well, but I just don't think it's all on them.
No, I didn't mean to say it was all on them. Like
No,
I
right,
sort of had a bunch of ideas of why it could be. I just wanted to kind of sort of bounce it out.
And I think, like, again, you see there were flashes, right? It wasn't like they were bad all the time. There were those. Yeah. You see that, maybe Slovis does actually get the timing right and hits them, and there are these big plays. Like the play, like the talent was there in certain aspects. I just think the consistency, like the inconsistency from both groups, hurt both groups.
I think the only thing I can really put on the receivers is Bub Means not having hands until like the Sun Bowl, which just get him on the jugs machine. I think that's the only thing I really put on the receivers, because that Tennessee game goes different if Bub Means catches a deep ball.
Hey, Nick Patty just throws a catchable ball, man. That's all it is.
I love it. Rick Finzo.
The spiral on it must just be mint.
All right. So, Dom, question for you. You said you were in the press box for the games last year. Have you been to any of the spring practices this year?
Yeah, I went to most of them. I think I was at almost every single one except for one. So, yeah, I was at them.
You've been to a few, let's say.
Yeah.
Now, we talked a lot about last year's team, a lot about the quarterbacks, a lot about the receivers. Is there anything you've seen at these spring practices that jumps out to you as being different with the guys we have in now?
I think we'll have a better wide receiver core. I'm really excited to see Lamar Seymour and Israel Polk. Lamar Seymour's from Miami, and
Polk's from California.
Polk is from California. They're both really talented guys. They have a lot to prove. Obviously, more kids are coming in, but they came in as spring enrollees, so they are a part of the class of 2023. I'm excited to see what they can do and how they can push some of the more veteran guys on this receiving core to either step up, or maybe they can get a game for themselves, or even shine in return special teams. But yeah, those two guys have really stood out to me. Defensively wise, Samuel Okunlola, defensive lineman, has been really talked up big by the coaching staff. I'm excited to see what just the defensive lineman can do again this year. I mean, we're losing Kalijah Cansey, Deslin Alexander, and Haba. So seeing what players like David Green and maybe Tyler Bentley can bring in their final season here at Pitt, and also like Elliot Donald and Nakai Johnson as well. Those two guys, just looking at what they can bring, those two Whitfield guys. Really excited to see that unit this year. They're going to be really good, I think. But it'll be different. They'll be different players, so it'll be interesting to see how they adjust.
Have you seen much of Dejon Reynolds, the transfer out of Florida, at the spring practices?
Yeah, a little bit. Not as much as we probably like, because I don't know. They're not really doing a lot of like you're not seeing, like when you're watching the practice, you're not seeing like all the cool stuff you probably want to see. It's still a lot of drills, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be good. I think I have I wouldn't say high, but very good expectations of him to do well this season. I'm excited to see what he can do.
I was going to ask you a question about Phil, but you're just seeing drills. I don't know how much you can tell about a quarterback from drills. Every quarterback should look good in drills. If you don't, you've got a problem.
If you're throwing on air and you're not looking good, that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the difference between Phil this year is he's going to have less expectation to be great like Slovis was last year because of how Slovis did. But I think that he's going to want to prove himself in a way that Slovis probably just wasn't able to do. I think he's a Whitfield guy, but he went to Notre Dame and he went to Boston College. But I think he just did an interview where he was like, "Yeah, I should have just gone to Pitt," which we can look and everyone can say like 2020 vision. Yeah, I should have gone to Pitt, but I mean, I think he's got the talent. I saw this kid play in high school for Pine Ridge, and he was incredible. Really, really talented player. Really was the star of that program. Good basketball player too. He's an athlete. And what I've seen so far is just some good drills. I mean, wasn't as good as I like to have seen in the spring game, but a spring game, I don't know what to say about a spring game really. So we'll just see game 1 against Wofford September 2nd at Acrisure Stadium. That's all I can really say. I mean, I don't know what to say. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's all. He's been injured a lot, so hopefully he stays healthy if he's going to be a good player for this team.
Hell yeah, brother. All right. Anything else on the current team as it is?
I like the defensive back unit. I think they're going to be really solid, and I'm excited to see some different players like Tamarian Crumpley and Noah Bigelow are two players that I've been looking at, just seeing how they'll hopefully progress this season. Marquez Williams, Rock as a cornerback, you're going to want him there. PJ or Philip O'Brien is a good player. I hope to see him sort of branch out this year and become more of a leader. So I'm just excited about the defense, really. I think that's all I'll say. That's a great thing about a Pitt team. People around here love good defense, and they're going to love this team, I think, at least defensively.
I definitely agree with the Okunlola take. I mean, when I was watching him during the spring game, he looked really, really good.
Yeah.
Like, he was fast off the edge. He's going to be a great pairing with Hayes. I'm excited to see Fitzsimmons play. Sean Fitzsimmons, he looks sort of like almost like Devin Danielson with just like quicker off the ball speed. I'm hoping we see something from Bam Brema, because like the only thing I noticed about Bam Brema, like, he played well in the spring game, and it's the Pitt D line, their best unit. They're going to look good in the spring game. He's really big. I think we just use the big guy. Run the big guy play.
Nothing better than that.
Okay. So let's move on to Pitt football recruiting. It's been a minute since we did an episode. Our last episode was a mere 3 weeks ago, something like that. It was the 24th of May. So we've had we haven't covered anything of the official visit season, which has been, for lack of a better term, fucking insane for Pitt. We've gotten something like 11 commits since the start of June to add to another 11 commits going into June. So let's
Oakland in the summer. Oakland in the summer, baby.
So right now, Pitt has 18 announced commits. I believe there are still 3 out there. 3 or 4 guys out there. I forget which number. So since our last episode, we've had the following commitments: Caleb Holmes, consensus 4-star. I believe a consensus 4-star lineman out of Georgia. That's an interior guy. Fun fact: he's the smallest lineman in the class, and a mere 6'4", 290. Beating out schools like Auburn, a lot of SEC offers for Caleb Holmes. We had Cameron Monteiro commit today, a wide receiver out of Massachusetts, 3-star guy. Ton of D-backs commit, starting with Allen Bryant, a safety out of Florida. Chasen Johnson, a cornerback out of Florida. You guessed it, we love Florida players. Tayshawn Banks, a cornerback out of Ohio. Nigel Maynard, an athlete projected to play D-back out of Tennessee. As well as Davion Pritchard, another cornerback out of Ohio. And then Mason Lindsay, a tackle out of Maryland. So I think unless I missed anybody.
That's pretty much everyone from June so far.
Okay, just double checking I didn't miss anybody. And yeah, that is everyone. That is, I mean, right now, take it with a grain of salt because we have 18 commitments, but it's the number 12 class on 247, which I think is probably the most consistent rating service.
I would agree.
Caleb Holmes, a huge get for the O-line. I mean, getting a 4-star guy for an O-line with Signetti's system is huge. Eric Ingwerson, the tight end, he reaffirmed his commitment. He canceled his official visit to Nebraska. And they're just stocking up on all these D-backs. I don't know how it's going to play out because we already have 6, and I think if I had to guess, they're going to have another one commit, and I'll get to that later. It's just all sort of vibes-based picks for me, but I still have to watch the tape on the new wide receiver from today, but I don't know. Dom, you do quite a bit of coverage of these recruits, so what are your thoughts on this giant June?
I mean, they're getting after it. One thing, we can talk about Underwood a lot, maybe he has something to prove in terms of coaching, but recruiting-wise, he is like the man. He is the guy that Pitt brought him in for, to be the recruiting guy, to be, we talk about Jeff Capel being the bag man. Underwood would also be somewhat of a bag man himself now. I mean, all the coaches do recruiting. Doesn't matter how big or small they are always out there making ties any region to where they're doing best, but he is like the number one guy. So, I mean, if he thinks that Cameron Montero is a good wide receiver, I'll trust his judgment on that. Obviously, not in terms of the 3-star. People would say, "Well, he's just a 3-star." But I mean, I have no problem with 3 stars. 3 stars go to the NFL. 3 stars become Hall of Famers. So it does not matter to me. But in terms of this class, before I start ranting on about Underwood, I like the guys they're bringing in. Just some really solid athletes. Continuing to build that Florida pipeline, which is absolutely crucial for any decent team up north. Trying to think of other players. Pritchard's good. I mean, you want some Ohio guy, especially someone from Youngstown. Rust Belt connection. I like Mason Lindsay a lot. I watched a lot of tape on him. DeMatha Catholic's a powerhouse, so getting a guy from there is not a bad thing for Pitt. Anyone else I really like? I mean, you just talked about Caleb Holmes. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about, but just what a massive commitment he really is going to be for this program going forward, as long as he stays committed, which seems like he will be.
I feel like he's such a big get too, just from I don't know. Last year, I feel like that was a spot that we just needed more depth at. We had I don't know. We were kind of all over the place. Had some returners. Had some guys that need a little bit more development. And like you said, Zach, just to bring that big of a talent into this kind of run heavy, ground and pound. But I think he'll be a great addition. It'll probably be making a difference, sooner rather than later, which is always great when you look at these young guys coming in.
Yeah. I have some thoughts. So I told myself I wouldn't be too insane about recruiting. I lied to myself. I broke my rule this year. I watched the huddle tape of one of Pitt's quarterback targets, Trevor Jackson, out of Florida. He's a borderline 3-star, 4-star guy. He got invited to the Elite 11 finals out in California. He's out there now. He's really mobile, and the one thing that jumps out on his tape is he's making – Patrick Mahomes is a bad comparison, but it's the only quarterback that's known for off-schedule throws, like moving and throwing. He was doing that consistently, scrambling out of the pocket, throwing, being very mobile. He's got a really big arm for a high schooler. He's got to be the guy. I'm now locked in. He's got to be the quarterback they get in this class.
Did we just get a Patrick Mahomes comparison on the pod?
I don't want to make that because it's gonna blow up my face, right? But it's just the way that he was moving out of the pocket and just naturally just slinging it down the field. Not a lot of quarterbacks can do that. It wasn't even he would reset. He was in the middle of running and he'd be throwing it down the field. It's the first thing that came to mind. It's probably a bad comparison. I'd probably sit down and think about it more, but that really jumped off the page at me. It's oh, this is a mobile quarterback with a pretty big arm. This is what Signetti wants. Yeah. So
no, I'm just giving you a hard time. It's it's one of those things that you can't coach that. So when you see that, it's very exciting, and not, like you said, not a lot of people do that. So yeah, we'll do it. We'll go more in depth, and we'll do a Mel Kiper floor and ceiling for him. But
okay.
Right now, we'll set the ceiling as Mahomes. I like it.
Every recruit ceiling is Patrick Mahomes. Now, I believe he's taking an official visit to Missouri coming up next week, so that's the last official visit they got to get through. I'd really like it if Pitt were able to pull through and get this guy to campus because I think he can be special. Tweet that came out, I think it was last night. Pat Narduzzi dropped his fucking 300th Pitt is it tweet.
2024.
The Hunt 2024 is the Hunt 2024. 2 H's. What phrase does Pat Narduzzi love that starts with 2 H's? No answers?
Hometown hero?
Hometown hero. Bingo.
Cue card. Line.
I think we know. I think we know at this point. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. If I got to do the whole Charlie Day, Pepe Sylvia, Cameron Lindsay, I think he's going to commit. He's got the 4-star some rivals, but he's a 3-star everywhere else. Really huge whip-heel linebacker to get into this class, especially because Gabe Williams, the other guy who visited, ended up coming to Virginia Tech. Big get for whip-heel recruiting. I think he would be – would he be the first whip-heel recruit in this class?
No, Ty Uhas, Pittsburgh Central Catholic.
That's right. Okay, I'm silly, but he would be really, really big because if he comes here and does well, you got to start getting these guys in, especially coming from Aliquippa, the powerhouse school of producing NFL talent in the Whitfield area. I'm seeing a lot of crystal balls for another defensive back, 4-star safety Coy Beasley out of Cincinnati.
He's a good one.
Surprising that he doesn't have a lot of contact with Ohio State, but the Wilt Fong, who is 247's lead crystal ball guy, put us in as landing Coy Beasley. I believe he announced when he's going to commit, if I remember correctly. I could be totally talking out my ass, but I think that's one guy to look out for as far as landing on the recruiting trail. And then I think the last guy I want to take a look at is last year they took 2 running backs in the class. I think they're going to try and do that again with Yassine Willis, a running back who visited last weekend. 3-star from Jersey, but he has an Alabama offer, so he's probably not 3-star.
When you get an offer from Alabama, stars don't mean shit.
Yeah, exactly. I think Nick Saban knows a little bit about recruiting that we don't know.
Yeah, Yassine Willis, you guys talked about him. He's a good player. I liked his tape. I like what he brings to this team. If he commits, but it does look like he's a potential to do so. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But just looking back at Trevor Jackson, not to get too much into him, but when Kenny Minchie decommitted, I think that really hurt Pat and Narduzzi, and also having him decommit to Notre Dame. Obviously Pitt, Notre Dame, not really rivals, but long-standing opponents, have played a long time. So you don't want to lose your player to Notre Dame. That's not something you want as a Pitt fan. So if Trevor Jackson could commit, you have a player to develop as a quarterback in your own system. That's massive. So obviously he would be a great commit for Pitt. He's got the talent. Tape's good. Just see if he comes or not. Really.
Hell yeah. I think that's all I got on football. Basketball, big news. Blake Hinson's back. How are we feeling?
That was absolutely necessary. I think you need him back badly. I think he was so important for this team last year. Great guy to be around. Fans love him. Players love him. Jeff Capel loves him. He's reinvigorated his career here, and his talent to shoot the ball from almost anywhere on a court and make it look so easy. It's just incredible. I mean, he's exactly a player that is important for Pitt as they lose a lot of three-point shooters. But you need players with experience coming back. Transfers are always great, but it's always good to have some people that know what Pitt's all about. And I think Blake Hinson knows what Pitt's all about. I would assume you guys would say the same.
Yeah. It felt like one of those things where, man, we kind of we were pretty sure he was going to come back. It's never a sure thing with that, but just the sigh of relief I took when it was official. Big relief for all the reasons really that you said, Dom. I'm ready for those games in January where he's just going nuclear.
I will say a what the hell 3, as Jeff Capel put it, makes a couple appearances on the old hype video. I'll put it like that. I'm really happy he's coming back. I tried to make the hype video all returning players, so getting able to use all those Blake Hinson clips was huge for me because that's a lot of clips. You got a lot of threes, a lot of really cool threes.
The human highlight tape, they call him.
I think if you combine him with the dunking ability of the Diaz Grahams, that's that's a human highlight tape.
Yeah.
If he made that 3-pointer against Miami to win the AC regular season title, he would have been immortalized in Pitt history. I think he would have been a statue would have just been built.
Already, yeah.
Built.
They'd be pulling the cover off for already.
I buried that 3 from my mind. I'm cutting up the highlights from that game I remember how this one ends. Because there were some really good threes in that game, and then the 3 that hangs on the rim for half a year, all of a sudden is the one that doesn't go in. It was I could talk about that for a while, but you know what? He's got a chance to run it back, and that is fucking awesome. I mean, was it 3 years ago when Champagne decides to leave early? Does the NBA draft process, or did they have the draft process back then, or does he just go?
I'm pretty sure you could
yeah.
Waters back then, yeah.
When he left, I think it really sort of put some emotional damage on some Pitt basketball fans' brains. So we're like, this is Champagne all over again. It is really nice to have something good happen to you.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that we have a season where we have optimism. I mean, how many recent men's basketball seasons have we had where we've been like, wow, this team might be good this year, or like they're going to be fun to watch? Like, we haven't had many of those in recent history.
You before this past season, it was kind of like, man, I hope we can play UNC close, or I hope we get one over Duke or something like that. But completely flipped the narrative.
And now we have Capel Hill. So
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it, if the Champagne X McGowan's Tony core doesn't blow up, we probably have that year a couple years ago, but it blew up. So it's sort of a delayed gratification, I guess, if you will.
It didn't just blow up. That was an atom bomb blow up. That was the bomb to end all bombs.
Let's not rehash this. This is gonna put one of us in a PTSD fit. Anything else with basketball? I don't think we got anything.
I saw that Greg Elliott was working out for the Pistons. So good luck to him. I don't know what'll come of that. Maybe like probably a G League contract if we're being honest with ourselves. But good luck for Greg Elliott, man.
Burton's working out with the Lakers today, I believe, too.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
And Elliott, for him, that's his hometown team. He's from Detroit, so I mean, that's really got to be like a childhood dream to be able to play for even just a workout for your hometown team. I mean, I can't say enough about how great that senior class was for Pitt. Those graduates. I mean, Nike Sabandi, Jamarius Burton, Nelly Cummings, and Greg Elliott. They are immortalized in Pitt history. I think it's just one of the best senior classes. It's not going to be like 2009-esque with like Levance Field, Sam Young, some other. Who else is there I'm missing? But like that class, like those players that were there. There's such a huge turning point for the program that I think I will always remember them. Pitt fans remember them, and I wish them the best of success professionally, either here, overseas, or wherever. I mean,
no, for sure. Let's flip to the other basketball team. So we're going to get into Dom's beats now. So he covers a bunch of stuff for Pittsburgh sports now. We'll start with, since we're on the topic of basketball, we'll flip over to women's basketball. Recently hired a new coach from UMass. What's there to know about the new women's basketball team?
Well, a lot of different players. They had many players transfer out. I think they had 9 players transfer, around 10 and then a player decommitted. So it's 10 players that were supposed to be on next year's team that are gone now. And they brought in a lot of new players too, obviously, because they only had 4 returning players and then 2 recruits. So you can't have just 6 players on the team. I mean, that's not going to work. So they have like at least 11 players right now. They brought in he got a recruit to decommit from UMass, who he originally recruited, Erin Battle. She's going to be joining. She's a talented guard out of New Jersey. She's going to be on the team. And then he got 2 JUCO players and 2 transfers, and Jala Jordan, who is the daughter of former Pitt men's basketball player Gerald Jordan, who played for the team in the 90s, the late 90s. And then you have Bella Perkins, who comes from USC. But let's get into Torrey Verde. Salvatore is his first name, but Torrey is what everyone calls him. He's a really confident coach. He's done well at previous stops. He helped turn around the Eastern Michigan program from basically a bottom basement dweller to a really talented WNIT team. And then he went to UMass and turned that team from a pretty poor A10 team to one of the best the last 2 seasons. They made the NCAA tournament, I think, in 2022. Last year they lost in the final, but they were the regular season champions, I believe. So that's far better than what Pitt's done the last 10 years since joining the ACC. They've had 1 NCAA tournament appearance under Susie McConnell-Serio in 2015, and since then under Susie McConnell-Serio, and then Lance White, which didn't work out, obviously, because he got fired. They've only had that 1 appearance. Every other season was below 500 and just not really acceptable, even though the ACC is great. Torrey Verde, his staff, and the players coming in are going to, at least what he hopes to, and I think what Pitt fans hope to, is build a new culture and establish a new program that's going to actually compete in this tough conference as the ACC.
It's kind of funny the parallels we've seen from Pitt men's basketball to what the women's team is kind of going through. So I'm sure, Capel and Tori will definitely have some meetings together to kind of talk through what building that team from scratch looks like. So he's definitely in the right spot.
Yeah, he has experience, and that's what Heather obviously athletic director at Pitt, wanted. Lance White did not have that experience. He was a great assistant coach and good recruiter and was good at teaching defense, but did not have that head coaching experience. So Tori Verde does have that head coaching experience, and that's exactly what they wanted. He's now here. Hopefully he has the ability to change this team around, because it's been pretty disappointing watching this team the last few seasons. They just have not been good. Really poor at shooting. Last year was pretty abysmal. The thing is, Lance White, while good at recruiting at Florida State, which is a good program, he just could not do it at Pitt. The players he brought in were just not at the level you want them to be at the ACC. So the question for Troy Verde is, can he bring them in? He told me he can. He told me he can win right away, but I haven't seen that from this program in a long time. So I'll give him some patience, but I think he's got what it takes to really change this program.
All right. Are they going to play the city game for the women's basketball team this year?
Yes, every year they play the city league. Dan Bird is a big fan of women's basketball. He's a head coach at Duquesne, and he loves playing Pitt. And I'm assuming Tori Verde, who played Duquesne while a head coach at UMass, because they're both in the A10, the Atlantic 10. He'll be really happy to rehash that rivalry. They're both pretty good teams. So it'll be a lot of fun. I wish the men's side had the city game, but we don't get that, unfortunately. We get Alabama State. So,
you know what? It's time to learn from the women and bring back the history game.
Yeah,
history game, the city game.
City game.
Women's History Month on the brain. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But you're welcome, ladies. All right. That was a great. Because honestly, going into the episode, I knew pretty much nothing about women's basketball except that they were bad. So it's nice to actually learn about something on the podcast and not just rant. Next sport, one that we are, or at least I am, a huge fan of on the podcast. I made Mason watch the game with me last year, and I think I got him into it. Women's volleyball. Is this the year?
Well, maybe a few months ago I would have said no, but last 2 weeks, middle blocker position went from to one of the best units in the country. They brought back Chiamaka Nwokolo, all ACC, incredible player, only 6'1", but incredibly quick and is dominant at the net, which all middle blockers should be, but she is exceptional at that. And then they bring in Bree Kelly from Florida. She played under Dan Fisher, head coach Dan Fisher at Pitt, at the USA U21 team at the Pan American Cup recently, with one of the best setter, or maybe, in my opinion, the best setter in the country, Rachel Fairbanks. They both played together, and now Bree Kelly is now on the team. She got the size, 6'4". That's kind of what you want out of your best middle blockers. Generally, the best middle blockers are around the 6'4", 6'5" range. She did well in the SEC at a good Florida team. Pitt did beat Florida last year in that Sweet 16 game, so she does have history outside of playing under Dan Fisher, playing against him. So that middle blocker position was a worry for me, but bringing those two players back, and also graduate transfer from the Big Ten in Emma Monks from Michigan State. And if you know anything about women's volleyball, the Big Ten is a murderer's row of a conference. And while Michigan State wasn't great, having someone experienced against those great teams is incredibly important, and important for depth and leadership at that position. And then you also have, for the final, not to go too much in the middle blocker position, but it really is really important, Rachel Jepson, 6'4", really dominant, was, I think, training with the USA team this year. Well, not the top team, but one of the under teams this year. I'm excited to see what she can do. I saw her a little bit last year, but obviously with Serena Gray and Chia playing, she didn't see too much time, but I think she'll be seeing a lot more time this season. So, middle blocker position was a worry, but having that back, Pitt has pretty much almost a lot of their players back from last season. So, we're talking about Kat Flood, great serve specialist and outside hitter. Valeria Vasquez Gomez, experienced outside hitter and incredible at just spiking a ball. One of the better outside hitters at doing that. Juliana Dalton was brilliant. Was pretty good last year. I hope to see her even improve. She's got the height. She's got the length. She was injured towards the end of last season, which hurt Pitt a little bit, but she will be a huge component for this team going forward. I'll let you guys ask any questions since I've been rambling on for a little bit.
What are we looking like at the preseason rankings here? Do they have any early rankings out? Who do we have above us? Who do we have to take out?
Well, the ABCA, which is the there's no AP or like coaches poll. Well, that's like the coaches poll. It's like the American Volleyball Coaches Association. That's their poll. Pitt was like 6th last year. So I don't know what they're going to be this year. They don't really release that until like August at some point. So I have no idea where Pitt's going to be, but I'm assuming top 10. I can't imagine anything with the new addition with Chia coming back and Brie Kelly joining that they're not going to be top 10 because they have most of their team back.
I'll go. So the first poll last year, Pittsburgh was number 6.
Right.
The teams part of them were Nebraska, Texas, Wisconsin, Louisville, and Minnesota. Which we went 1-2 against Louisville and beat Wisconsin. Obviously, that was a game we watched. Awesome game. Go back and watch it. The full game's on YouTube if you want to watch it.
It is.
In the final poll last year, we were at 4 with Texas, the champion, ahead of us. Obviously, Louisville 2nd and San Diego 3rd, which they just had us.
They beat Pitt in the season opener last year in 5 sets, actually. San Diego, good team.
Correct.
They did just lose their head coach, so I don't think they'll be at number 3 the next season. But
if I had to guess, we'd be somewhere in like the 4 to 7 range.
Probably around there.
Nebraska and Wisconsin to be fighting for a top 5 spot, like all those Big Ten teams, like but they'll be high. I think we'll do a poll release show. The preseason poll last year came out on August 15th, so we've got some time to plan for that one. So you mentioned her kind of briefly, but I think it's almost sort of crazy how I think she's a little underrated, but Rachel Fairbanks, you called her the best setter in the country. I remember when I talked to Kayla Lund after the season this year, I was like, okay, how does she get a triple-double, and what does a triple-double mean in volleyball? Because, I get it in basketball, but how do you get one in volleyball? And she's like, basically to get a triple-double, you have to play 2 positions to get the requisite stats in digs, assists, and kills. And she just went, that's what she does. That's why she's one of the best in the country. That's why she had the first ever tournament triple-double. I just wanted to say that's not really even a question. That's me ranting. Do you think after we shored up that middle block position, is there anywhere that Pitt needs a player to step up? Or I don't know if they're at the scholarship limit. Do they need to get another transfer in?
The team's basically set at this point. I don't think they're bringing anyone in. It will be interesting to see how they do it. The right side hitter position now. Courtney Bizzario, All-American last year, came in from Iowa, was incredible, 6'5", dominant. Just one of the big reasons why Pitt got to where they were. She made that final kill against Wisconsin, that Elite Eight game. She led the team in kills, and she pretty much led in almost every single game. They're going to have a great freshman, I think, play. I think they're going to have Olivia Babcock, one of the best players in her class. She's going to be starting at that right side hitter position. But Rachel Fairbanks not only does work as a setter, she also had played at right side hitter last year. So it'll be interesting to see how she sometimes moves around, because Lexis Akeo, a great setter in herself, a bit different because she's a bit shorter, but still comes from a very dominant Hawaiian volleyball family. She's good. She'll be great again this year. Hopefully she's a bit more healthy. She was a bit injured last year, but Olivia Babcock, keep her in your heads, Pitt fans. You're going to want to remember her. I'm excited to see what she does this season.
All right, one last question on volleyball. I'm going to pull this up real quick. You saw the schedule that came out for the 23 season, right?
Yeah, I pretty much wrote something about it. Let me see if I have it. Yeah, I have it out.
Okay.
I have the list ready.
Okay. So, of the games that were announced, right? What are the ones that stand out to you as these are going to be matches? What are the matches that stand out the most exciting, or the big ones on the season? Obviously Louisville. I think we can cross that one off as an exciting, high stakes match. What other ones on the schedule sort of pop out to you as far as what's going to be a great match, what's going to be exciting, what's going to be a good test against a good team.
I mean, the ACC for volleyball is outside of Pitt and Louisville and maybe a little bit of Georgia Tech is a bit not amazing and generally hurts Pitt's standings at the end of the season. Even if they have like 30 wins or like 27 wins at the end of the season, they're generally like, well, if we didn't win outright the ACC and win every single game, we might not even get in a final, like a top 4 spot to host all the way through in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, yeah. But that Louisville game will be at the Pete, so everyone's gonna have a chance to go to that game. That's November 18th, I think. I don't know. That's a Saturday, I believe. And there's no Pitt football game that day, so you have no excuse, Pitt fans. You got to be there. What else was I going to say? Kentucky. They're playing Kentucky Labor Day weekend in Lexington and at home. I don't remember whether Kentucky won the SEC, but they're one of the best teams in the SEC, and that'll be a really good team to watch. That's going to be at the Pete Sunday, September 3rd, 1 p.m., so you're going to want to watch that game. Oregon comes to town, Elite 8 team. They were one set away from taking down Louisville last year, and what Pitt would have faced them in the Final Four, I believe. So that's going to be a good team. And that's I'm looking at my calendar because I have all the games in my Google Calendar, of course. They play them Thursday, September 14th. Any other games? Yes, Pitt volleyball taking on Marquette away. It's a Big East team. The first match between the two programs since they were in the Big East in 2012. Both teams are very good. Marquette was really good last year, so I'm excited to see how they play against them. And they'll play BYU again. I mean, BYU is a pretty solid team. That's the first game of the season. It's going to be in Montana, so a bit far away, but they're playing a Montana weekend. They're playing Montana and Texas Rio Grande Valley as well, so that'll be the first weekend for Pitt. So, but yeah, those Kentucky home and away, Oregon, Louisville and Georgia Tech, of course. And then Marquette. Those are really good games that you should have on your calendar. Non-conference matters a lot in volleyball, so if you're a Pitt fan, get out there in September. Those are some great matches.
I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, I mean, volleyball does have a they ain't played nobody sort of mentality to it. They wouldn't handle the grind of a Big Ten schedule.
And then just went into Wisconsin. Those fans waited hours to get into that arena. They waited hours, and Pitt just went in and won 5 sets. I mean, they beat the number one team, the national champions, the year before. The Pitt can compete with anybody. That 5th set against Louisville was so it wasn't. I mean, disappointing. It's just unfortunate because they just went down 8-1, and it was just like, oh, damn it. Because if it was close, I think either way, Pitt could have gotten to that national title game. I don't know if they beat Texas, but that would have been a great matchup. Would have been massive. Yeah. Not much else to say other than Pitt volleyball, good. Go support the team if you're a Pitt fan. It's fun to watch. Volleyball games are fun, especially those non-conference games against pretty good opponents. It'll be good to see them play.
We'll be getting on some of those this fall for sure. I mean, we had a lot of fun watching that. Both we caught the end of set 4 and set 5 for Wisconsin, and then we watched the Final Four game. I mean, what can you do when those 2 Louisville players went Super Saiyan?
Yeah, I know.
It happens. Okay, so let's go from really good team to a championship team. That is the Pitt wrestling team, another one of your beats. We had the 197-pound weight class winner.
Yes. Nino Bonacorsi, Bethel Park, Whitfield product, went undefeated this season. And in those wins, he did not have any pins at all. So he didn't pin anybody, just really dominant, ton of takedowns, in control almost basically every single match. There really weren't many matches where I was like, oh, he might lose. Maybe 1 or 2 where I was like, that's it. And he really was just incredible last season. It's so good for Pitt to finally have a national champion again. He was in the final in 2021. He lost that. And then 2022, he didn't even play. So he really had a lot to prove last season and just made his way up the rankings, got that number 1, won the ACC, and really dominated a weight class that, I mean, people said was easy. But at the same time, I said, well, he beat what's in front of him. What else do you want him to do? did what he had to do, and Pitt fans, you got to love it. I mean, Keith Gavin came into this program 4-11 the first season. They were 4-11 in dual matches, and to now he turned that around 13-3 the season after. And last season they were ACC co-champions with a really good programs at Virginia Tech and NC State. So that's really good from Pitt's point of view. I mean, I'm excited for them next season, but there's not much to really say other than, there's no schedule out. There's no, but I mean, it'll be good ACC matches again. So January time comes around, you'll be one to watch. But also, if there's any big non-conference matches in like November and then maybe in February, the Iowa State dual match last season was incredible. They lost on criteria, which is essentially how many points. So like they were tied on points essentially. Like they were like it was like 15-15, I think. Like, but because I can't remember how they won, but they won. It was just unfortunate. I don't know. It's like there's points scored in each match for each wrestler, and while the team scores were tied, they won like because individual wrestlers won by more points. That's how Iowa State won the match. So there's no ties in wrestling. It's just that's how so criteria is just how many points a wrestler scores, and they total that up as a team. And that's how Iowa State won. They were number 3 last year, number 3 in the country behind like Penn State and Iowa. So Pitt being able to compete with them is a good sign going forward. That's what you want out of your team.
I love Pittsburgh, man.
Yeah, it's a great name.
I don't know who came up with that, but they probably need a raise.
Do you think that they could get some sort of deal going with Pins, the bar on the south side? Some dual sponsorship.
They should. I mean, look at all the stuff that Nino got after he won his title. He got like a sandwich and an ice cream flavor from Millie's, I think. So I mean, like, I don't see there's endless brand deals for Pitt wrestling. But I guess I can get into some wrestlers for next season if people are like, oh, who's going to be there next season? Because graduated. Cole Matthews, 141 pounds. He only lost one game the whole regular season, one match the whole regular season, but just didn't reach what he wanted to. Didn't end up placing at the NCAA Wrestling Championships. So he'll have a lot to prove. He's still one of the best wrestlers in the country, incredibly defensive, but we'll need to see a more offensive approach from him in order to win a national title, which I think he's well within his grasp. And Dayton Pitzer, I mean, was really well liked. He was a first year last year. He wrestled. He's a heavyweight, a bit skinny, but he beat some of the best talent in the country. But he redshirted because Keith Gavin wants him more ready for the next few seasons where he has a better chance of winning a national title. He will be a great wrestler to watch going forward. Any other wrestlers I can think about? I mean, the entire team's really solid. Like they're really, really good guys. They're easy to like. It's come down to a match that fits. I mean, that's all I can tell people. I mean, eventually we'll be looking at a new stadium, obviously, since they're building that arena and sports performance center. So the fits will be gone. So enjoy the fits while you have it, I guess, if you don't have any negative inclining sorts of Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. Some people do. So, but not me. I enjoy the venue. It's nice.
I love the fits. I think. I mean, I went for a couple volleyball games. It's such a great atmosphere because you're always right on top of the action.
Right.
You're just. I've never felt closer as a fan. And I was still maybe halfway up the stands. So it is a great atmosphere. If you can get out there, do it.
Right.
And I guess we'll move on to the last team, the other Final Four team that you covered, men's soccer. They beat High Point in the.
They beat Portland at home, the Elite Eight. But yeah, I mean, this is a team just like volleyball that's been to the last 3 Elite Eights, and they made their second College Cup, which is the Final Four. Essentially, that's what soccer Final Four is called. In 3 seasons under Jay Vidovich, one of the best coaches in the country, he won a national title at Wake Forest, and he's been building a pretty poor program into just not just something solid, but one of the best in the country. I mean, they are just great to watch. And last season, while they struggled a little bit at times, they had great players. And when the NCAA tournament came around, they just went off. And what a great win at Kentucky, last-minute winner, like 87th minute with 3 minutes to go. I mean, Burton. They lost a lot of players, though. And that Final Four loss against Indiana was a bit disappointing, just 2 goals in the first half. And that was just kind of it because Pitt struggled a bit at times to score, but I mean, you can't knock a Final Four appearance. Really can't. I mean,
Yeah.
not many programs can say, "Oh yeah, we had 2 of our programs make a Final Four last year." How many programs can say that? So, um, a lot of players left from last season. I mean, graduated, went to find different opportunities. I mean, Valentin Noel got selected in the MLS Super Draft. So did midfielder Jackson Walty, and Bertrand Jacquesson went to Real Salt Lake. So, I mean, you're having guys go to the MLS. It's a big deal for a soccer team that was pretty poor and didn't have an ACC win until Jevitovic arrived, and that was in 2016. So, like, it's a really big shift, and they're a lot of fun. Women's soccer is too, obviously, but I mean, so I'm saying is essentially not only get down to the Fitz, get down to Ambrose or Bannock Field, watch some soccer.
You get up to
You
Ambrose.
gotta go up. Yeah, you gotta get those legs working. You gotta walk up not just cardiac hill, but it gets even steeper from there. Go to the OC lot and back around a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they'll be fun to watch. I'm excited to see who the new players are. I really don't have an idea because the roster's not even out for next season. Don't have a schedule, so I couldn't be like, oh yeah, go see this game. So, but hopefully in the future we get some of the more details about the team. But I will say this: Jay Vidovic is traveling. International players, Europe a lot of European players. You don't just travel to Florida for soccer. You got to go all around not just the country, but across the world to get some of these players. Which is good. That's what you want from a good team. Some of the best players you can get from around the world to go play for your program. So, what else can you say?
Narduzzi's building a pipeline to Florida because he heard Messi's down there, so he's making some calls.
So like soccer recruiting, obviously, like I'm looking at like last year's roster, and I would say about somewhere around half the guys are from outside the U.S.
Yeah.
Is this like Capel's international recruiting on steroids, more or less?
Did you say this is Capel's like recruiting strategy on steroids, essentially?
Yeah, because like he's got the Diazagrams, Fede's an international. He didn't recruit him internationally, but like he recruited another international player. Conte is Senegalese. They were in the running for Mongolian Mike, which we've missed this on the basketball segment. But first off, Mongolian Mike might be the best nickname of all time, and I watched some clips of him from Dayton came across my feed. He's making like these crazy no look passes. I'm like, what the fuck? Anyway, in the running for Mongolian Mike, but like I'm looking at this roster, like a lot of French players, a lot of Brazilian players, and then sort of from other places in Europe. Like I would describe it as the Capel strategy on steroids, almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like U.S. players aren't good. It's just like there's so many players in Europe that have that played in academies, played against really good players, and are like, I probably should get a college degree because like I don't know if I'll make it big, but I'll go to the U.S., go to a good program like Pitt, and try to get some visibility. Maybe make it into the MLS, and then hopefully, I guess, make it back to Europe if that's what they want to do. I mean, obviously, because the best soccer leagues are in Europe, but any sort of professional soccer would be a win for a lot of these players, and we're seeing that a lot now. I mean, look at the Riverhounds. Arturo Ordonez has been brilliant for them. I mean, I know it's USL, but I mean, now you got a pipeline, Pitt to the Riverhounds, and now you have Pitt football to the Steelers. I mean, it's just, you got to love it, don't you? If you're a Pitt sports fan all around, it's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But I mean, yeah, in terms of recruiting strategy, they have to go to Europe. Just the better players are there. Valentin Noel, French guy, was brilliant last year. Bertrand Jacquesson, French. He was great last season. Their goalkeeper was Dutch. He was the son of Edwin van der Sar. I don't know if you guys probably don't know who he was, but he's one of the best goalkeepers in the century, essentially. Played for Man United and Juventus and a bunch of other big teams. So, but his son was also good. He had like one of the best goals against average. The defense, they were really good defensively last season, which is why, in spite of some offensive deficiencies, they were a very good team. They scored a lot of goals. They scored goals when they needed, and they defended really well. But yeah, they got to go to Europe. And listen, the one thing about I'll say this: you might not have hired all these coaches, but when the bag comes around, the bag comes to these coaches. They need something that it's getting done. I will tell you that. And anything these coaches need essentially is pretty much guaranteed to them, which is what a good program should be doing. A good athletic director, a good athletics department should be doing. So give some credit to her for keeping these coaches around, because I mean, Pitt doesn't have a soccer tradition. Pitt doesn't have a women's soccer tradition or a volleyball tradition right? So you don't want these to be seen as a stepping stone. You want these coaches around long term, right? So that's what I will give Heather Lyke a little credit on that, just in case some people are like, well, like I don't know, like Scott Barnes hired Jay Vidovich amazingly, even though he also hired Kevin Stallings.
The duality of hires.
Two quick questions. Is Van der Sar, is he coming back next year? Is he?
No, he's done. He graduated. I don't know where he's going, but yeah.
I will push back. I did do early on the podcast. I did a lot of research on like Pitt's volleyball history, and they might not have like the fan history, but like they have a really good winning percentage, like a winning history at Pitt. The coach before Fisher was terrible, but like he literally was the worst coach in the history of the program at like 500. But I will agree with you. Like she might not have made like all the great hires. Like I believe softball, gymnastics, and maybe women's volleyball were all her hires who have been fired in this last calendar year.
Women's basketball, not volleyball.
Volleyball in the brain. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Fired again, Fisher. No, this is not breaking news. But like she recognized that she has a great soccer coach, a great and a great volleyball coach, and a really good football coach. And she said, "Here's the bag. Stay here." And like as far as Vidovich and Fisher go, like Vidovich has basically built the program from ashes, and Fisher woke up a sleeping giant, and Pat Narduzzi has raised the floor of the football program. So you almost cannot give Lyke enough credit for retaining coaching talent at the university.
Right. She's going to make some mistakes. I mean, a lot of these programs aren't amazing. I mean, like Pitt women's basketball is not amazing. So while she made a good hire, I think the hire isn't a bad hire. I mean, he was a good assistant coach, but just sometimes it doesn't work out. It's not the end of the world. It's more about keeping the coaches you have, bringing good ones in. I mean, she brought Randy Waldreman, who had a national title at Notre Dame, and now women's soccer went from nothing and finally made their first NCAA tournament this year. They went to the Sweet 16. It's a big, big deal. I mean, that's a big deal. And then, but even going to Narduzzi, she gave him that extension back in 2017 to 2024. People criticized that. They said Narduzzi's not good enough. And now, like, I mean, that was a big deal. That's huge for recruits to know coach is going to stay.
Yep.
Like that. Yep. That's a big deal. A lot of people don't realize that. And Mike
it
Bell,
2-year, like a lot of coaches get those like 2-year extensions just so they can say they'll be there through recruits like trip to the NFL. He got a 7-year extension. Then 2 years ago, he got another 6 years on the end of that. I think he's here through 2030 under contract.
Yeah, right. Yep.
They are committed to him, and she's not afraid to make these swings. That's how you got to be as an athletic. You got to make bold swings to make your programs better and bring in more money for the department.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at baseball, they didn't have the best season this year. I won't get too much into that. But Mike Bell has an extension. He got an extension after last season in 2022, so he's here through 2027. So, Lyke obviously believes in him, and him being able to be like, I can bring players in, I can move things around if I need to, is a big thing, right? Again, baseball really doesn't have a huge success in Pittsburgh. Obviously, northern school, it's going to provide problems. But, I mean, if West Virginia can be as good as they are, why can't Pitt? And I think, like, Mike Bell, while the season didn't go as well as you would have liked, I mean, not to, but I mean, like, he's still there. He's got a chance to. He's obviously obviously believes in him. So I'll take her word on it for that.
Yeah,
because the coaches that she didn't believe in that she hired are gone. Obviously.
I will say, I just looked it up. Pitt baseball is the university's oldest sport. 1869.
Yeah,
makes sense. We've gone really long. This is probably our longest episode in quite some time. Mason, you got anything else? I think I'm out of topics.
No, I think we just squeezed the full orange of Pitt sports out right now, and I love it.
It felt good to really, really get into the weeds. All right. Before I sign us off, Dom, where can the people find you? Where can they find your work? Plug all the shit you want to plug right now. Go.
Dominic Campbell on Twitter. Dom is money. Yes, silly name, but easy to find. Can't deny that. Yeah, I'm on there. I also do. I'm going to be on Pittsburgh Sports Now. Pittsburgh Soccer now has my Pitt stuff, and I also have done a little Riverhound stuff, so that's all on there. Just keep in touch with the two sites and follow the accounts, and you'll see a lot of my work. And I'll be I tweet at every event I'm at. So if I'm at Pitt volleyball, men's soccer, wrestling, football, camp, some recruit's house, I don't know, but like I'm going to be there. I'll let you know. We'll get some articles out. I'm going to try to get some features out this year. This summer on just new players, new coaches, and some recruits. So you guys have stuff to read because obviously people love to read about Pitt sports, and I've noticed that. So I'm going to keep doing it and give you guys what you want.
Once again, Dom, thanks for coming on. I mean, this episode was so much fun. You've got an open invite to come back on the podcast. And to the listeners at home, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow on Twitter at SimplifiedPod. You can find all of the hosts' Twitters in the bio of the show. Tell a friend, tell your family, and go follow Dom. He's one of the best follows for Pitt sports out there. Other than that, like I said earlier, we're going to start our conference previews when I finish writing them because I have not done that yet, but we're going to look forward to that. New artwork, and hope you like the new intro. Simplify Season 2. Let's boogie. See you next time.
Hail to Pitt.
You say it too.
No, hail to Pitt. Sorry. Of course, hail to Pitt.